I will call this general meeting of the Governing Board, Madison District Governing Board, to order. Ms. Humphreys, would you please call the roll?
President Spear.
Here.
Vice President Osborne.
He is motioning here.
Member Gresham.
I'm here.
Member Holcomb.
Here.
Ozzie.
Here.
All members are present. There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rodriguez, would you kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Madam President. It'd be my honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I will accept a motion to approve adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Causey, seconded by Mr. Holcomb. Please vote.
I don't have board docs up. Can I vote by voice
Yes.
vote?
Yes, Ms. Gresham, you may voice vote.
Okay, I vote aye.
Thank you. We are still waiting for board docs to load.
Who are you waiting for, Adam? Okay.
That motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 2.1 Superintendent Report. Dr. Baca.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board and Executive Team. Just a reminder that our PTO luncheon is this Monday, September 20th from 11 to 12. You should have received the agenda. And we look forward to reconvening our PTO leaders from every school. As you know, we paused that last year, and so we're looking forward to that event this coming Monday. Next, I would like to introduce to you our new Director of Student Services. Although she already started part-time, she is now full-time, getting settled in the Phoenix area. So Edie Dolan is our new Director for Student Services. She was previously an administrator for special education with the Manhattan, New York City Department of Education Bureau Office, New York City Department of Education. Long title. There, she provided support for over 50 schools and 24,000 students. Additionally, she is a certified life space crisis intervention and therapeutic crisis intervention trainer and served as an adjunct lecturer for Hunter College, City University of New York. Ms. Dolan has a Master's of Science degree in Advanced Preparation in Special Education and a Master of Science degree in Childhood Education. The Dolan family, who you hear back there, Mom, Dad, and the two little girls, have spent their vacations in Phoenix for over the past 7 summers, July and August, and have relocated to the Valley that they have come to love. So I'd like to call forward Edie Dolan.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Baca. Good evening, members of the Governing Board. Good evening, Executive Team. I just again want to thank everyone for this opportunity. I am so excited for all of the work ahead in Madison. It is thrilling to be part of a district where students are at the center of every conversation, and the warmth and community here is palpable. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. And again, can't wait for everything ahead. So thank you all very much.
And would you like to introduce your family? Because they're part of Madison now, too.
I would love to, and you can tell they're very vocal. So that is my 4-year-old daughter, Summer, my 2-year-old daughter, Jade, and my husband, Alex, and we are thrilled to be here. Yes, you're too. Thank you for clarifying.
And when do the parents arrive? Your parents?
I'm counting the hours, but I think it's 2 weeks and 4 days.
Okay.
So not that there's a complete countdown. We're really, really excited, and again, just so grateful.
Well, thank you and welcome to the entire family. We're glad to have you. And then finally, I'd just like to, for all of us to recognize the difficult task on hand that all of our school personnel are dealing with, as well as our families and students. We thought this year would be a little bit different, but obviously things have changed, and I just want everyone to make sure that they take time to not just say thank you, but show gratitude and thanks for everything that each school staff member does, whether it's the principal, assistant principal, MAC worker, nurse, health associate, teacher. If we could just take the time to share our gratitude for all that they do for our students, and try to remember that we do the very best that we can under some extraordinary circumstances, and we will continue to place student as the center of all of our decisions, and do our very best to make sure that they receive the premier education that our parents and families expect. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baca. Moving on to governing board member reports. I'm going to start on my right. Ms. Kazi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to state how excited I am that we're finally going to be returning to our PTO luncheons. It's been a while since we've had the pleasure of getting to see our kind of parent community level leadership and hear from them on how things are going and what their needs are. I also just want to give a special shout out to our school nurses and nurses aides. I listened to an NPR story in September, and it really brought home the tremendous weight that is on their shoulders right now. We're in the third year of the pandemic, and this school nurse that was interviewed in the story said it felt like Groundhog Day to her every single day. So as our school nurses and nurses aides deal with COVID truly on the front lines daily, I just want to say that they should know that they are truly appreciated for what they do, and that their work is truly critical to our mission. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kazi. Dr. Osborne.
Well, as my debt of gratitude to all the district staff, I have nothing to report to keep this fast.
Thank you. Ms. Gresham.
We have had middle schools were there, and so we're happy to be able to provide that for our students. So we're making it happen despite our difficulties, as Dr. Baca said.
Thank you. Mr. Holcomb.
Yes, I'm too very much looking forward to having the PTO lunch. I mean, being able to see all the members of the community, and get a free lunch out of it too. I mean, it's a double win. I also had the opportunity to go to Hamilton this weekend, and I heard the grapevine that one of the stars of Hamilton is coming over for one of our classes and doing a master class. I had heard that, maybe not, for advanced theater. If not, at least I've started another rumor again. Something good at. And last, on a more serious note, I had the opportunity to view and listen to the oral arguments in the Phoenix Union High School, the ASBA, and all the schools and individuals seeking to overturn the mask mandate. I listened to the arguments. I was very impressed. And I'm very hopeful and confident that the judge will do the right thing. And so I look forward to that. In any event, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holcomb. I wanted to share that I was able to attend the Arizona School Boards Association Law Conference last week, along with a few of my colleagues, which is always, I believe it's their best conference. It's an opportunity for us to learn about Supreme Court rulings, appellate court rulings, how they impact educational policy, as well as legislative action and how that may impact Madison. And I wanted to make sure that all of our taxpayers understand that we go through a continuing education process every single year on the board, so that we're up to date on all of what affects our taxpayers, our staff, and our students. I also wanted to echo a little bit about what Dr. Baca has said. We're not going on too much except to say that this year is more difficult for our staff than last year. While it may be more difficult, last year may have been more difficult for our parents, it is doubly complicated for our staff. And so I want to make sure that we are extending, as parents and community members, extending as much gratitude and thanks as we can, because what is being asked of our staff is, and what we are doing as a district, goes above and beyond what many of our peer districts are doing. There's a reason that we do not have, there's a reason that we have the majority of our students in class every single day. That doesn't happen by accident. Our fellow districts in our neighboring areas are not experiencing the same level of success. And that is due directly to our staff. So I just want to make sure that everyone says thank you again and again and again, to every crossing guard, every bus driver, every administrator, every teacher, every school secretary, every cafeteria employee. Thank you. That's all I have for my report. Thank you for letting me know in advance, Ms. Humphreys, that we do not have any, executive session. Is there a call for executive session? Moving on to calls to the public. Ms. Humphreys, let me know in advance. There are no calls to the public. Moving on to the consent agenda. We'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Osborne, seconded by Mr. Holcomb. Please vote accordingly.
Ms. Gresham, I vote aye.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham. That motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 6.1, action items. Dr. Baca, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board and Executive Team. I'm pleased to welcome Ray and Associates, Ms. Jan Vesley, Dr. Barbara Goodwin, and Dr. Steve Chestnut. Dr. Goodwin and Chestnut are on the phone, but Ms. Vesley is here in person. Tonight, you will be approving a timeline along with various other actions that need to be taken. I have provided for you a folder that you have in front of you. In there, you're going to find a calendar that I sent you earlier this week so that it's a little bit more visual for you to be able to plot the various activities that you need to consider. If you jump over to November, on the top right-hand corner, you're going to find tasks that are still needing to be placed on the calendar, and that's the same that you have for December. There are certain tasks that aren't calendarized yet. In addition to your packet of the calendar, you also have samples of the promotional flyers, along with the one that was used back in 2018 when you were recruiting superintendents for this job. And then finally, I've also included the almost finalized list of focus groups. Dr. Vesley will be able to, and I'm sorry if I called you Miss Vesley, Dr. Vesley will be going through what the focus groups will do and the difference between that and the survey that we would send out to our families and staff. So she'll be discussing that as well, but I also wanted you just to have the members of the focus groups that we have thus far for you to preview as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jan Vesley, who will go over the various items that they will need in order to start the search for the superintendent. Dr. Vesley?
Thank you, Dr. Baca. Good evening, President Spear, Vice President Osborne, honorable members of the board, Dr. Baca, and to the Madison School District community. Thank you for selecting Ray and Associates to conduct your search for your new superintendent. And I know it's going to be very difficult to say goodbye to Dr. Baca, but as a recently retired superintendent, as I shared with him earlier, every day is a vacation day, Dr. Baca. So we look forward to you also enjoying your retirement. My name is Jan Vesley. And my Arizona colleagues who are also working on this search, as Dr. Baca shared, Dr. Barbara Goodwin and Dr. Steve Chestnut, who are both retired superintendents from the Phoenix area, will also be working with me as we work with all of you throughout this entire search. And they are attending this evening via telephone. Ray and Associates is a nationwide search firm completing approximately 50 superintendent searches each year. And I think we did more than that this past year because there was a lot of superintendent retirements. Most recently in Arizona, we completed searches in the Paradise Valley and Alhambra Unified School Districts to fill their superintendent positions. And additionally, we are currently working with the Vault School District to secure a new superintendent. We are very excited to get this process underway and have brought with us some information tonight to guide our discussion of next steps. You have each been providing the supporting documents, and I think Dr. Baca talked about that information was available for your reference this evening. The first document we would like to review this evening is a draft timeline. And Dr. Baca has so graciously put it into sort of a calendar form, but I thought I would just sort of talk about the phases and sort of run through the different phases and sort of what those phases involve. And then at the end, if there's questions about the phases, if there are things that you would like to add, to change, delete, just please let us know, because again, my colleagues are standing by on the phone to take notes so that we can then update the timeline in accordance to what your wishes are this evening. As you can see on the handout, stage 1 is really our launching point and encompasses planning and board input activities occurring over the next few days. As we're very excited to get going on this, once we get board approval tonight for the process, the timeline, and the events and activities, our work is just beginning, and we'll be, moving along very, very rapidly over the next several weeks. We are going to be going through more specificity on some of the specific topics later on. And then stage 2 involves gathering data and clearly identifying the desired profile for candidates. Ray and Associates, along with Dr. Goodwin, Dr. Chestnut, and I will implement a survey online, and I believe you have the methodology to send that to the stakeholders that you would like to complete that survey. And so we will provide the survey. That survey then will be aggregated by the subgroups. There's identifiers on the first page of the survey, are how they identify themselves: a parent, a teacher, classified staff, an administrator, board members, and then we aggregate all of the data and bring back all of that information to you at a later meeting. We'll implement that survey, and the survey will be open from 9/17 through 10/5 is what we have scheduled on the draft timeline. We will rely heavily on Madison to advertise for us. I think it's going to increase the likelihood of participation by sending it directly again to your stakeholders, but we'll probably do a little nudging with some reminders to make sure that folks complete that survey as well. The next important activity that we're going to be doing on September 28th and 29th is conducting focus group meetings with smaller stakeholder groups to gather information. And these focus groups are really, we like to do them virtually because what we found over the last several months is the participation has been very, very strong because of the virtual nature, because it's very convenient for people to log in from wherever they are to be able to attend a Zoom meeting. And we create unique Zoom links for each stakeholder group. The three of us will one-on-one meet with each stakeholder group and collect the data. And I know you have questions about that I can certainly answer a little later on in the presentation. And then our team will take, again, all of that stakeholder group data, which is really very, very rich data. We create reports that go to all of you so that you can hear their voices in the things that were represented during those focus group meetings. And a lot of it is really things that they want a potential new superintendent to hear. Because remember, we're going to be interviewing each and every semifinalist. We're going to spend a lot of time with those semifinalists, not only doing one-to-one interviews with them before we bring a group to you, and we're going to represent what those stakeholder groups said in that session, because it's all about a match for your community, finding the right person, for your district. And so we want the voice of those stakeholders to be able to understand what they think is important, not only in terms of the next superintendent, but what they think is important about this community, because we are going to, when we interview those candidates, we're going to talk about the things that we heard in those stakeholder groups, because we're going to represent who you are so that we can, in fact, find a good match for you, the ideal match for the Madison School District. We will also conduct one-on-one interviews with each one of the board members. So we'll be setting up, we'll be reaching out to you to say, when can we do a phone conference? And we're going to collect data from all of you, because we want to hear from all of you individually, and then collectively we will put together an aggregated report which really represents the voice of all of the board members that we had a chance to interview. So I think it's nice for you to be able to see what collectively the board said, but also what collectively all of your stakeholders said in those focus group sessions. And all of that information comes back to the governing board. We will also work with Nicole and Rodriguez, who is here this evening. I had the opportunity to meet in the creation and the finalizing of the position flyer, the job description, and application in collaboration with Madison and the governing board, because we want to get that flyer created, because that's what we will use for all of our advertising. Not only when candidates link into the Rain Associates website, the first thing that they will see is that flyer with all of the requirements, with all of the information that will be highlighted about your district, but they'll also be able to see the connect to the application, connect to all the requirements for the position that we require them to submit in terms of their interests. Stage 3 then involves, before I move to stage 3, at the end of stage 2, we have tentatively targeted October 12th to review the survey results with the board members and give final approval from the board of the flyer, job description, and application, so that we've got everything ready to go for stage 3, which then begins our opening window of the application and the advertising of the vacancy. We like to open the candidate application for 4 weeks. And the reason for that, first of all, a lot of the national advertising, even state advertising, there's like 4 weeks, 8-week choices. And we usually like to try to select a 4-week window of applications nationally. Then once it gives, the 4 weeks gives us a chance to really let the advertising work in terms of the recruitment of potential candidates. And then our team, once an application is, they hit send, that they've submitted all the materials, we begin our screening. We don't wait till the 4 weeks is closed. We wait till they have said, I'm done and I'm finished. And then we begin doing all of our screening. So usually 4 weeks is a good timeline to allow us that opportunity, because we are going to probably be screening the most searches. We get between 50 and 60 applicants. And we're going to narrow that down to bring you a smaller group of semifinalists for your review, probably 10 to 12 people. So we have a lot of work to do in those 4 weeks to be able to narrow the field based on the most qualified individuals and best alignment. Then stage 4 includes, on November 23rd, we will meet with the board executive session to finalize interview questions and procedures and present top candidates from the entire application pool for board consideration. In preparation for this process, we do a thorough vetting process, background checks of all candidates. A member of our team will conduct a one-on-one interview with each of the top candidates. We also interview all of their references and ask the same set of questions for every single reference check that we do. We review all documents for accuracy and alignment. So we read every single letter of recommendation. We look at their application. We look at their resume. We make sure everything is aligned and what they say on their application is aligned to what's or their resume, so that and if there is anything that we have questions about, we are calling the candidates for verification to be able to verify information that we may not understand. From the initial screening, we will bring forward approximately 10 candidates for you to consider. You will be presented with paperwork screening information and an unrehearsed video of each candidate responding to several questions. And so that will be a part of the information that you will have available then to screen those candidates that you wish to interview. So we'll bring all of that supporting documentation as well as the reports that we've created. After the presentations of candidates, the board will select semifinalists during this meeting for first round interviews. This generally results in about 5 to 6 candidates moving to the initial interview stage. The semifinalists have made it through 2 rounds of screening processes. And this process is typically a virtual interview to save potential travel expenses. That's the way most of our districts have been doing the first round interviews, is virtually, but it's entirely up to the governing board in terms of what your preferences are. But as I shared, it can also be an in-person interview. After the board has conducted the first round interviews during the week of November 29th in executive session, our team will join the board after your interviews to review and discuss next steps with you. The board then determines which candidates move into the finalist phase, and this conversation with our team happens again directly after that first round of interviews. And stage 5 consist of the finalist interviews, if desired by the governing board. Sometimes the governing board during the first round, they know who they want and they are ready to make an offer, but typically there's usually 2 rounds of interviews with semifinalists and then usually 2, maybe 3 candidates for finalist interviews. But again, that's at the discretion of the governing board. How that finalist process happens is really up to you. Some districts have 2 to 3 candidates return for group meetings. Some districts have semifinalist interviews via virtual meetings and then have the finalists return in person. Some districts, when possible, have conducted both first and second round interviews live, but managed travel costs by inviting the 2 finalists back the day following the first round interviews to conduct final interviews. So that's something that, again, the board will decide. Some districts have the candidates wait a week and then return for finalist interviews. Once the board conducts the final interview and identifies the desired new superintendent, the board then prepares a position offer and finalizes a contract, and then consecutively the board will create a press release announcing the selection. And the timeline, the draft timeline that we presented allows you to finalize your process by early December, ensuring that the final board approval could take place at your regular meeting or a special board meeting in December. So with that said, are there any board questions or recommended changes to the draft timeline? Yes.
One of the things
here.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and start because I know that we have had some conversation about the in-basket process that we are very fond of and have found that to be very much a Madison procedure that has yielded, we believe, positive results.
Great.
And also the second is the community forum in person for the 2 final candidates. That is something I didn't. Am I missing that?
2 or 3 final candidates. We had 3 left.
Did we have? Yes, we did 2 or 3. I think that that's something that we can leave to the process at this point. I would not advocate that we box ourselves into
Absolutely.
2 or 3 candidates. I think that the process will reveal which candidates we should be bringing to our community by that point. But I want to make sure that we have that on the schedule.
It's not uncommon that we do a community forum, so it's been a little different because of the challenges of the pandemic.
Yes,
we've done many, probably 50 or more virtually, believe it or not, over the last several months, very, very successfully in a community forum. So we can definitely work with you. We can facilitate whether you want to do that in person or whether you would like to do that virtually.
I don't have it. I mean, I would be curious to hear what my fellow board members have to say about virtual versus in person. I will always default to in person. I believe that gives us a better grasp of the individual and how they may fit within Madison. Secondarily, I do know that our participation in things since this pandemic has happened has gone up because of the availability of virtual. It's not easy. This is a terrible time for parents to be tuning in to a board meeting, and yet now they're tuning in. Our engagement is even higher because it's available online. It's live streamed. So, now on YouTube. Excuse me. So
well, I think we have the opportunity to do both because we have this beautiful Center for the Arts and a lot of a lot of space for people to sit and people that could be watching and providing questions at the same time.
We will need to make sure we nail down some dates so that it works with our calendar at the center, which of course is at this point delightfully robust.
Right. That's awesome.
Dr. Osborne.
I did like the way we did the last community forum where they kind of broke it down to the teachers, the different groups. I thought that worked well, and I maybe we can do that.
They could provide comments. They could provide comments based on what group they get with. I think that was helpful for us.
Yes, Dr. Baca.
So if I may, Dr. Vesely, Dr. Goodwin, and Dr. Chestnut, I can let you know exactly with the community forum how it was done on a rotation on the same night between 3 different stakeholder groups. And I can explain that if the board decides to go forward with that community forum and how we could do it here at the district office, utilizing hopefully some space at the Center for the Arts.
That would be wonderful.
Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, and I would like to have the option of having it in person, depending on how things happen with the Zoom. But I found in each of the the superintendent process we've gone through, that community forum, either really cements what you thought before and also brings out some different things about the candidates. I think that is a real, once we've gotten down to the last 2 or 3, I think, and literally sitting in the back and watching the interaction between the superintendent and the teachers or the community members is extremely helpful in that process. So I would definitely want to have it, whether in person or mixed. I think planning on mixed if at all possible.
And I think it's just a matter of timing. So you finding out the availability of your facility, you would obviously it would be the candidates that are going to the final interview. And so once those things are decided, but I think it's just probably identifying the date that works well with your facility. And we are delighted to do that.
I do want to ask Ms. Gresham if she has anything else to add since she is not, since she's on the line.
Thank you. No, that sounds good.
Okay.
Defer to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some more.
Yes, Ms. Kazi.
So, I don't know if you remember this, but Sarah and I.
Oh yeah, we did.
We wrote a fair amount of this, so I have a little bit of a bias.
Lovely work, I might add.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in looking at the examples, I still love the format that we've done. It's clean, it's clear. It's not, you don't get buried in the weeds of too many different fonts and pictures and whatever. You can always go online if you really need to do a deep dive. So my question is, can we speed up the development of this? We're giving people 3 weeks for the online survey link to get back to us. Can we give them 2 weeks so that we buy ourselves a little bit more time?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Definitely.
The other question I had is, looking at the flyers that Dr. Baca had shared that have been done by Ray & Associates, you always seem to be listing the salary range, and we did not. Please speak to us about how critical that is.
A lot of the advertising that you do require a salary range. And the other point that I would like to make, you want viable candidates who are serious. And sometimes if you have an East Coast candidate and they look at the salary range in Arizona, if there's not a salary range, they would go, oh gosh, look at the sunshine, look at the palm trees. I'm going to come because surely they're going to pay me what I'm worth. And we want to be realistic in the range. And I think a range is the safest thing to do.
Okay.
That way you can, in fact, look at the salary in accordance to experience, skills for the district.
And to your point, and I hope I'm not interrupting,
Not
but
at all.
I do have some suggestions on salary range based on the Arizona average and then also the national average. Arizona average is $150,000 a year. National average is $180,000 a year. So I think that that is an appropriate range. But I'm going to ask for feedback from my colleagues and also from Ms. Vesley.
I think you're spot on.
Okay, Dr. Osborne.
A couple things. I assume also when we also describe the other perks and benefits because it's, the additional elements make it a fairly robust package. And the other thing at some point for probably later board discussion is at some point maybe talking about some type of retention bonuses or something because I think it's important to me that, we've gone through superintendents every 3 years and I want to create some incentives to, some longevity.
I think that's fabulous, and I think those would be, contract issues that you could definitely would incentivize a candidate.
Mr. Holcomb.
If I may, I have been involved through, not for the superintendent here, but another education organization where we got to the end and the person we selected didn't do it because of the salary. I mean, it was one of the most unprofessional things I've ever seen, but the person seemed really high. And not having that, the idea of the salary to begin with can lead to unfortunate results at the end.
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding. You are suggesting that we go with a salary range, correct?
Yeah, I think we do need to have a salary range, particularly in this market, particularly. And I was going to suggest, since we talked about the brochure, I also very much like the brochure that I had no part in creating, so I thought it was very good.
No, it's lovely.
But I thought it was the.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, they did. And with Nicole, I think, because I think one of the things we can show through the brochure and hopefully through this, is that we are different. We believe we are different. We feel, I think our strategic plan shows we are different than a lot of school districts. You know, you asked a question, and part of this is what would we like to tell people about Madison? I think our brochure needs to show that, not in a flashy otherwise, but just as sincere as possible. I think there, and as we go through these factors, and I really want our brochure to reflect that.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. It's a beautiful brochure. And so we will likely be asking permission of all of you to be able to share it with future districts as well to showcase that work. But it's a beautiful flyer.
Ms. Gresham, did you have anything to add? I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to participate. I know it's very hard to do telephonically. I have had to do it myself, and I always feel like I'm just only, I'm in the
Nope,
background.
I'm fine. I appreciate it. I think it sounds good.
Okay.
So it sounds like we have a flyer from last time. Is that what, I think I missed that.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Nope, I'm fine. Thanks. My voice is, I'm losing my voice from cheering for the runners.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kazi.
Thank you so much. So I guess just overall looking at this timeline, I know I asked about like lopping off a week as far as the deadline on the survey. We have a lot to do in the last 3 weeks, like a whole heck of a lot. Is there any way we can condense the top by 2 weeks to buy us a little bit more time at the back end?
On which process?
So somehow obviously we got a week from the survey materials.
Right.
Again, I'd have to look at this a little bit more closely, but I would love to see if there's a possibility of getting that application out a little bit earlier so that we have, it's a pretty condensed, the 15th is the deadline, and we have a final meeting with you following the last interview on the 6th of December. That is tight. That is 3 weeks of really decision making and trying to get, information from applicants and who they've used as their references and background checks and stuff. I'm a little worried that that's a little too tight, I guess.
Since we can definitely, I think the safest thing to do is to tighten up the survey window. It's hard for us to tighten up the candidate window because we need all of those 4 weeks.
I would want you to have as much time with the candidate. That's the part I'm worried.
But the survey, tightening that up, and I think since your flyer is so far well developed, it'll just be a matter of refreshing it or tweaking it accordingly. That can then allow us to at a sooner time collect the quality information and to get all of that done sooner, so we can add that to your.
Dr. Osborne had something, and then I will go to you.
And I'm not opposed to pushing everything back. If we had to go another week into December, I wouldn't want to go any more than that. But I'm open to doing that as well. And if we have to have a special board meeting to make the offer, I don't think that's.
The only thing that I just need to add is the last time we did this, I wasn't in the performing arts world. And I will tell you, December is like May in the school world, but like times 17. December is insane. So we start our season, our holiday concert, our first one is on the 5th, or on the 4th, I think. No, it's the 3rd. And then I will have appearances with the boys choir almost through that whole week. So I will engage as much as I can, but just be aware that that's going to be a potential issue for me.
That said, I think it really is important for us to, understanding that day jobs do get in the way sometimes, that these meetings it is almost imperative for each of us to be physically present for these meetings. As we've all 4 of us sitting here have been through this process at least twice. And Ms. Gresham is, I know, on board for this, obviously. And so as we're going through these, we need to commit to being here physically. This is the sacrifice part.
Absolutely. I mean, literally, I will do everything in my power. I just want to say that,
I think it just level setting expectations is an important piece of this. Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, I actually, and I'd like input, Dr. Baca, and from you as well. I actually have, I like gaining the extra week, I think, on the survey and that, but I'd like to spend that more time getting people in and that. I actually think that having a fairly compressed schedule at the end after you've gone through and gotten down to the semifinalists and that, there's a momentum, both from our side and from the candidates. I think if you draw that process out, I think I don't think I think that's counterproductive, if I really do, because people really get intense and get it. And actually, for me, December seems to be a busy month for me too. Trying to get at things. I think having that compressed, and we just take it that way. But I'd like, you've done this obviously a lot more than we have. Whether there is that, but that's my personal feeling, having gone through this. And Dr. Bach, you've gone through it several times as well.
I think I heard that you prefer in-person interviews. Is that correct, for first and second round? I mean, those are things, because that will help decide and define.
I'm sorry. I am interrupting everybody.
No,
today.
you're good.
Does anyone else have those kind of days? I apologize. I much prefer an in-person interview for the first round. I don't believe that's necessary. I don't feel as though we should incur travel expenses for a district for first rounds. For once we get down to a candidate pool that is of a reasonable size, I really would prefer in-person interviews. I would be interested in hearing what my colleagues have to say.
I agree.
Everyone, okay. Everyone is nodding or saying they agree. So that would be my preference.
That's helpful, because if you are incurring travel expenses, oftentimes what happens is they do the semifinal interviews, and then the next day or the day after they do the finals, because people may be here from out of town, and so you're trying to not incur double travel expenses. But if you do the virtual for the first round, then we can you narrow it down with you, and then invite just those finalists to that final interview and the community forum, and try to put those side by side. So that final interview will probably depend on, again, the community forum, because we'll probably want to put those relatively close together, so that in the event we do have somebody traveling from out of town, then we'll be able to have those side by side.
So I just want to remind everyone, so last time we actually we did the semifinalists, and it really was the candidate community forum that distilled things down for the finalist portion.
No. No.
Didn't. Okay.
No.
Am I recalling this incorrectly? Okay, because I'm looking at this.
We had our finalists, our 3 finalists.
Right.
In the community forum.
Right, exactly. What I'm saying is we did the semifinalist interviews in person. That's what I'm saying. Did I not say that? I probably didn't even explain that properly. Yeah.
Yes, actually, Dr. Baca, who was a participant in the process,
yes.
Please go ahead and share.
Thank you, Madam President, Ms. Causey, members of the Governing Board and Executive Team. It's going to be just a little bit different because you didn't do a second round of interviews. The suggestion, which I think I would recommend, is that you do that. Okay? And when you have the second round of interviews, it can be the same day as you have the community forum. So if you look at your calendar, if the finalist interviews are on December 6th, which is a Monday, you have a special board meeting for those interviews, and then that evening can be the community forum. So it's done all in the same day.
So then where do we think we would fit in the written interviews, basically the in-back?
So when you talk about the in-baskets, if you go to November and you ask for that in-basket activity, all of that can be done. The deadline of the application, I think Dr. Vesely and the Rain Associates team can do it anytime between the 16th and the 22nd in preparation for the 23rd, when you finalize questions, procedures, and actually before the 29th, which is the first round of interviews. So there's plenty of time for those in-basket activities to be given, and that may help narrow down your semifinalist for interviews.
Yeah, because we gave them a 2-day turnaround, and I think that was the point for the in-basket, is to see how quickly they could generate solid responses.
That's correct. And another reminder, with the in-baskets, you had select groups of stakeholders within the district who scored those for you. You can either do it that way. You can leave it to Rain Associates to go ahead and make their recommendations based on what they have viewed within baskets, or you can view them yourself and do that on your own.
I have a suggestion on that, and that would be to defer to Ray and Associates. You are the professionals in this arena in terms of the in-basket. Obviously, we would be working together on the parameters and the scoring per se. But in terms of actually aggregating all of that information, I think that is best done by Ray and Associates.
The only concern that I have is, having groups of our employees participate at that level, at that early in the process, builds important buy-in and exposure to the candidates that we're considering. I don't know, that I think that's a lost opportunity.
And if I may offer this, Ms. Causey, Madam President, members of the board, you're going to have that through the stakeholder groups. So that's their part of the process, is actually that meeting and personalization with Dr. Vesely, Dr. Goodwin, and Dr. Chestnut, to be able to start that engagement. The only reason why I would say that is...
Excellent. That makes sense.
With everything also that they are having to do this year, that would be one extra thing that they would have to do. So I would suggest that there is a role for them already.
Excellent.
Dr. Osborne, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Dr. Baca in terms of and normally I would agree. And so walk me through. So we have the community forum, and as I remember, then we got some quantitative data off of the community forum. So I would envision, let's say we have the community forum on a Tuesday, we have a meeting on Wednesday where we'll be handed that quantitative data, and then we can make our selection for some reasonable time thereafter.
Dr. Baca?
You already, Dr. Osborne, Madam President, members of the board, you already have that kind of built in, where the special board meeting can be the interview finalists, interview with the finalists, community forum, and then the next day you have a regularly scheduled board meeting, where you can then make that decision as to who you want to bring as the finalist to enter into contract negotiations.
And not to get stuck in the weeds on the dates, can you please repeat exactly when that would be?
Sure. So on December 6th, which is a Monday,
Yes.
is when you can interview the finalists. That evening, the community forum. And then Dr. Osborne, per your desire to have that feedback collected and reviewed, and then make the decision the next day, you already have a regularly scheduled board meeting on December the 7th for you to be able to do that.
Okay.
And then the other suggestion I have is we meet with Ms. Cos. If there's some certain dates that don't work, then we kind of adjust. If we're doing it now, then I think we can adjust around that so that you're as...
Yeah, I think the next iteration of a calendar that we get, I can... but
Exactly. And I mean, this is where it works that we're collaborative, and that those of us who have more flexible schedules can adjust and work together, because this is the number one job of a governing board. So, Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, and I think we may have already answered this, but I did want to get this out. I did feel that there would be having Dr. Baca and Dr. Lumley or others from our staff, be involved with Ray is some way that we could do it hybrid. And I understand about the level of work, but we have very good administrators here who have all gone through this process and seen what we're looking for, what happened, to help with Ray and Associates. Ray and Associates, we've hired them as a professional, but we have professional Madison observers, that I would like to take advantage of. I don't know if you've done that in the past, but instead of having just Ray and Associates do the inbox review, but do it in collaboration with our staff.
We're delighted
Does that
to.
work well? Not work well?
Well, and I've cornered Dr. Baca and made him pinky promise that he's going to be very much work in concert with me and also Ray and Associates.
And so if I may offer this, Ms. Spear, we will have Ms. Rodriguez, Nicole Rodriguez, and myself be the contact with Ray and Associates to be able to do all of that.
Okay.
And so,
if there's a needed expertise on any other internal staff member that isn't an applicant, we will also engage them with that as well.
and to that end, I wanted to thank Ms. Rodriguez in advance for all of your efforts with this process. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments thus far? We have identified the calendar, the in-basketing, the community forum.
If I may offer?
Yes, Dr. Baca.
Madam President, members of the Governing Board, I think if you approve the tentative timeline that we have here, we've discussed that. I've listed in there to make sure that we calendarize the in-baskets that you won't have to be involved with in terms of the actual sending out and so forth, just the review process. The video of each candidate will be, again, not anything that you would have to have on your calendar, but that will make sure that becomes part of the timeline. If you're okay with the special board meetings that I've outlined there for you, and including the community forum when we get to the same day as your finalist interviews, the only thing that would possibly need to be calendarized now would be this. If on December 7th you select the finalist to enter into contract negotiations, you need to determine what special board meeting you wish to have in order to approve that contract and have it signed.
With that, I would like to have a tentative date on our calendar so that should we need to, it is protected among all of our schedules. Would December, would it make sense to go on to the 14th?
My suggestion would be the 14th, simply because the following week is winter break, and I think 1 week, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Vesely, is a good turnaround time
It is.
to finalize the contract.
Okay, the 14th, because we do need to make sure legal has an opportunity to weigh in,
Yes.
as they do. The 14th, let's go ahead and tentatively schedule a board meeting for the 14th, a special board meeting, so that we can have that as our contract approval.
Then, Madam President, if the times are for the special board meetings are at 6 p.m. with the exception of the 29th, which you're going to need part of the afternoon, if not morning, for the first round of interviews. And on the 6th, we'll have to have a special meeting prior to the, what I would assume be 6 o'clock forums, that you would interview them. Those would be the times, but we can finalize that depending on the number of interviews you will have. I just ask that for the 29th of November and the 6th of December, you block off that entire day if you're able to, or at least let me know what's the start time that you can begin to be able to conduct those interviews. If all of that is okay, then as discussed, we have the timeline. So is there anything else with the timeline?
Mr. Holcomb.
And as far as the inbox and the review, because we normally look at that as a score, is there a utility at all for you to present that, not just present the scores, but present, the observations you have? In other words, sort of an oral report as to what came through on the inboxes? Is that a value or not? And is that something we could...
On the evening of November 23rd is when we will bring you a minimum of 10, likely 10 to 12 semifinalists that we've narrowed the field down to and done 2 rounds of screening. During that night, we are going to present the candidates to you, and everything that we have learned from our interviews, everything that we have learned from our references, everything we learned throughout the entire process with that candidate. So we will do a presentation of the candidates. You will also, the weekend before that, we're going to be sending you those videos, and so I would say the possibly the Saturday, the 20th and the 21st. We try to get those to you the Friday before we have that final meeting so that you have a chance at home and at your convenience to watch each of the videos of the semifinalists at home. We will also be sending you their application, all of their personal information. So we would ask that over that weekend that you could look at those candidates, sort of coming with that background knowledge. Then on the 23rd. We will then on the 23rd present everything that we have learned about those candidates. Then at that point you will have reviewed their application, their letters of recommendation, their resume, their videos, everything that they have submitted for your review. Then we will have a process working with you to help narrow that field down to the people that you would like to interview from that semifinalist group. You will then select the people the candidates that will go on to that first round. Part of that consideration could be the inbox activity that same evening. Would be my recommendation.
And if I may add to that, on the 23rd, that would be an executive session. So the reason why Ray and Associates would have to have those final candidates to you by the 19th, the Friday before, is not just for you to be able to review it over the weekend in anticipation for the Tuesday meeting, but we need to properly notify those candidates that they will be discussed in executive session.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And so the inbox could be, if it's an activity that is conducted by your staff, I would assume that you would develop that inbox activity, and then either we could help facilitate the collection of that information. And if you want your team to score it, then that would be one additional point of information you would have for consideration on the 23rd. I think it's a great activity.
And then if you feel we have command of the timeline for your consideration to approve, the next thing that I would ask that you discuss and then say we're good to go before you make your motion is to utilize the 31 qualities desired in the new superintendent for the survey. So if you take a look at that, it's online for you under the executive content.
Looks like this.
In terms of 31 qualities. And if you're okay with that, then I don't know if you want a discussion.
If you could just give us a moment to review this.
Sure.
I mean, we of course all reviewed this in advance of this meeting, but we want to refresh our memories. Let me put it that way.
Just the ice cream list.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually had fun filling it out this afternoon.
Yes, Dr. Osborne.
So, and it may not be appropriate for these 31 qualities, but one of the things I would like to see from the candidates is at least an assessment of how their district that they're coming from is doing. Whether, and it's not going to be the sole factor, but just are they an A district or whatever.
Sure.
What kind of progress we've made. So it's, in terms of when we get down to the narrower subset, that'd be some information that I would like to see.
Of course.
I don't know if it's appropriate for this, but that's something at some point in the process.
And I think that's extremely important. And that's a part of the work that we do in the interviewing of the candidate. We're going to try to gather as much data related to that, but certainly your interview questions too could certainly be crafted around learning more about their work, their district, those types of items that you want to hear from those candidates. But we definitely will delve into that to learn more about the district that they're coming from, because again, it's about a match. On the 12th, during your board meeting in October, it's when the board's going to finalize the profile, which is really the information that's going to go into the flyer. The flyer will be probably fairly well drafted. But the survey is you're going to see from your constituents and your stakeholders really those qualities and characteristics that they have identified as most important for Madison, which I think the board then on that night will select how they want the verbiage to go in the flyer, which is aligned to that survey data. So it's a way for you to get a lot of stakeholder feedback, to be able to create your flyer, which is it's respecting the voice of your community in terms of who you're searching for, in terms of those qualities and characteristics.
And so I would endorse the Rain Associates survey, which is the 31 qualities, as it's a proven survey that elicits what I think you would eventually want in terms of feedback from our families and staff.
Thank you. Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, if I can, I did sit down and do the survey myself.
Great.
This afternoon. And I can tell you, when I first did it, I did not like the wording of some of some used experience, provides, is committed to different, but two things I actually liked about it as I went through is, one, you can't check all 31, because the first thing is to check all, you have to do 10. And it forced me to really look at prioritize. And I actually have some that, if you read them together, seem inconsistent. But it seems to actually, you want to get that balance. Like, one of the things I want, I like somebody who takes input that makes decisions. But I also want somebody who, when doing that, looks for consensus or puts other things first. Because I've had a superintendent who was very decisive, and it was decidedly bad. And others that take consensus but don't take the extra step to really make the decisions that need to be done, and that balance. So and at the end of the time, I really did like this because it really made us think. And as we pull that together, I think we'll get a better idea of how that balance is supposed to be.
And we'll present all of that data on the October the 12th for you. So it'll be you'll be able to see how many participated, the disaggregation by subgroups, and that will really show you really what the voice is again of your community, that you would likely pick some of those characteristics and qualities to include in your flyer.
Thank you. Ms. Causey.
I just want to make sure, I know this is probably a standard flyer, it's great, but I just want to make sure that you take a look at our qualifications because, again, I'm really biased, but I think, I look at it and I look, wow, we really got exactly what we wanted with Dr. Bach. It really, really does. And I think that there's a lot of continuity. So if you could just take some time and make sure that in this form, what we said here is reflected in some capacity. And looking at it generally, I think that's the case, but it would be lovely if there was a little time just spent.
And I never see a board take just these statements.
Yes.
They merge them to fit for their district.
Of course.
But what this is doing is just collecting that voice at a larger scale.
Understood.
And then you pull it in towards your strategic plan. You pull it in. It's just to be able to highlight the points that you want to make sure that the candidates applying is aware that these are the things that are most important to you and your community.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dr.
So
Baca?
unless the board is wanting to go a different direction with the survey, we're good with the 31 qualities that Rain Associates has provided?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm assuming you're okay if there's any travel reimbursement for the finalist candidate, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll be approving that activity in one motion.
Dr. Baca, can I put you on? Can I have you hold for one moment? Ms. Gresham, I owe you an apology. We have moved forward, and I have not asked for your feedback. Do you have any that is counter to what we've discussed?
No, I don't. No, that all sounds fine. As far as I have a question as far as the surveys and the timing, I assume we can change that. Like if we get more responses early on, we can close it sooner, or if we don't get any, we can leave it open. That kind of thing.
Well, on a daily basis, we will have the participation totals, and sometimes we will nudge you to say, hey, could you send out a little reminder to folks to please how important this is? But it's really your data. It's for you to use, and so we will keep the window open at your discretion.
And
Okay,
Ms. Gresham, Madam President, members of the board, we'll all be providing you an update. Ms. Rodriguez and I will work together to be able to do that so you know exactly where we are. And if Dr. Vesely or her team feel as though we need to do a reminder, they're not getting the responses they would desire, we will be happy to do that automatically, so you won't have to worry about that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baca. I did interrupt you because that seems to be my shtick tonight. So what else were you going to say?
You did it correctly because Ms. Gresham needed her input. So the only other two things for tonight that would be needing approval as far as initiating the recruitment efforts would be for you to let us know if the $150,000 to $180,000 base salary range, and Dr. Osborne, of course, including separating out what we would advertise for benefits, such as the tax sheltered annuity and so forth, we would do. Then I don't know if there needs to be a discussion amongst you from that, or you're fine with that range.
I would like to hear from each board member that they are okay. Ms. Causey?
Well, looking at the comps, I mean, there's some outliers that were provided. But generally, I think that's probably, I think the outliers are because they're trying to attract to a district that has a mission. I think that's a good starting point.
Fowler,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly. Dr. Osborne, you were giving a thumbs up?
Yes, that's a good range.
Okay. Ms. Gresham?
Yes, I think if we're at the higher end of that range, just so we know we're getting, a quality candidate, and if And then with additional benefits, of course, that would bring that up too. So I'd be fine with that.
Thank you. Mr. Holcomb?
I understand where that came from, but I would like input. Dr. Baca, you've been in the locally, whether you think we have set ourselves up for success that's appropriate or not on your experience. Both of you.
I will defer to Dr. Vesley.
I think, yes, that is a good range.
Okay. Excellent. Dr. Baca, are there any other items that we do need to go through as a board?
Yes, just one last item, and that is approving the amount for advertising.
Yes.
Understanding that we're working together in concert with Ms. Rodriguez, and we defer to her expertise as our community relations and marketing director. But if you set a budget for us in terms of, do you want a $4,000 budget for advertising and a $6,000? I wouldn't go over the $6,000. Doesn't mean we're going to use that entire amount. It just knows we're not going to exceed that amount.
And if we could, Dr. Goodwin is standing by because she would like to discuss the advertising for the position and maybe make some recommendations for your consideration. So Dr. Goodwin, if you could come off of mute and discuss the advertising.
Absolutely. Madam President, members of the Governing Board, thank you so much. If you could refer to the Madison School District suggested Superintendent Search advertising sheet.
It's in the executive
Does
conference.
everybody have that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's this.
Perfect.
Does everybody have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the bid that Ray and Associates submitted, you included in our bid, we will be advertising with Education Week newspaper, and that will run for 30 days. We do want to open the position for a minimum of 30 days, so that will fit within that. Also included in your bid was the advertising with the National Association of School Superintendents website. On our website, we have 5,000 individuals that have regularly visited. On a monthly basis, they do. So we will advertise there as well. And since we have a salary range, we can also advertise for you on the latter's passport. What I would like you to consider heavily tonight, though, would be that very first one up there at the top under recommended by Ray and Associates. It's the AASA Job Bulletin, which is the go-to, as Dr. Baca knows, for anyone looking for a position. Our recommendation would be that you pay that 30 days. You choose to pay that 30 days for $409. That is on their general website. Everything, of course, is done electronically now. But we would also like to strongly recommend that you consider the job splash package for the additional $599. And what that means is that they have a database of 5,000 individuals who are looking for jobs, and they will actually put a unique email into each of their in baskets in their email over those 30 days that are specifically advertising your vacancy. And so instead of somebody having to go to the website, they will be pushing out your advertisement into their email box. So that's a real strong recommendation. You'll get a lot of bang for your buck if you choose to do those. We would also like you to consider down below the NABC so that we're actually expanding our diversification as well. So that's the National Alliance of Black School Educators, the National ALA, which is the Latino Administrators and Superintendents. We would like you to consider those as well. And then if you look down below the last four, below the other optional advertising, there are 4 places that we would recommend that you also advertise within Arizona. And we'd like to work in conjunction with Dr. Baca to make that happen because generally each district is a member of each of these organizations. And so that's a part of your membership. And that would be with Arizona School Board, Arizona School Administrators, ASBO, as well as ASLAS. And we would like to work with you to make sure that we get those folks willing to advertise as well. So that you can also consider the ones on the bottom, but really where you're going to get the most return on your money would be AASA, and then if you would choose to do NABC and ALAS as well.
Thank you very much. One of the suggestions that I'm going to have for my colleagues is that we approve a budget and that we have Ms. Rodriguez and Dr. Baca and Ray and Associates work together to decide which ones make the most sense based on that budget, as opposed to us making decisions about where to advertise. We are not the professionals that should be doing that. We don't know what the return rates are on these things. This is an animal that we don't know specifically, but luckily we have folks that do. So I'm going to make that suggestion. Is there any feedback that's different or thoughts, suggestions, Mr. Holcomb?
Yeah, I totally agree with getting the widest, saving a couple $100 and missing somebody. Would be perfect for us is foolish, I think, in the way we're doing it. I like all the recommended decisions for what's given, but I think we should approve more than the recommended amount, so that if there is something that comes up, our team has the ability to react without having come back to the board. So I don't know what would be the appropriate amount, because your package if I'm looking at what you recommended is the $5,349. That includes everything that's recommended? Is that? I want to make sure I get.
Yeah, actually, before we go too far down this road, I think that Ms. Vesley and Dr. Baca actually have some ideas for us in terms of budget.
Yeah, so for Dr. Vesley, Dr. Goodwin, Dr. Chestnut, but it seems like Dr. Goodwin would take the lead for Ray and Associates on this one, as Ms. Rodriguez would for the district. I would say if you approve not to exceed a $6,000 budget, that's going to give us plenty of flexibility, because I think Ms. Rodriguez would probably recommend to Dr. Goodwin that we also post on some of the sites that we have felt to be very successful, such as LinkedIn and such, that we would have to pay for, but we would be able to do that as well as some other digital advertisements.
Thank you for that suggestion. I appreciate it.
So knowing that if you're comfortable not to exceed a $6,000, then we probably will not even get close to that, but it gives us flexibility. Knowing that you're approving the timeline, knowing that at another time you're going to approve the application, so we won't worry about that. Knowing that we have the survey that you've discussed, along with the salary range, and along with the reimbursement for candidate travel expenses. Unless, Dr. Vesley, there's anything else.
I'm looking at your flyer and looking at the requirements, because I see you have doctoral degree preferred. So what are your minimal requirements? Because typically in the flyer we want minimal requirements, and I would say probably a master's degree, because that would align with a superintendent certification. You talk a little bit about, I would imagine, a trajectory towards superintendency in terms of experience. Would probably be something that you would want to call out, unless you have other ideas and you want a non-traditional type of candidate for this position. But we want to spell those out in the flyer so that we are very clear about, because our screening is going to be screening for those minimal requirements. So I want to know what it is that you want for the minimal requirements, so that as we go through a very methodical process with a spreadsheet, going through everything to document, and candidates who don't meet those minimal requirements are thrown out. So we want to make sure we understand what those minimal requirements are for your district. Is there any specific type of leadership experience that you would desire? Is there classroom experience that you would desire as a minimal qualification? Do you have a preference for someone who is bilingual? Those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure that we get on this flyer and that we're very clear on, so that when we're screening for you, we are screening for those at least minimal and preferred characteristics.
Dr. Baca.
So, Dr. Vesley, if we have a board meeting on the 28th of September, do you want them to finalize that? Because that comes ahead of the finalizing their approval of the profile and application, or do you need for them to do that tonight?
Either or. I would say it's in front of, it has to be in front of the flyer though. So as long as you get those identified, certainly we can share with you some of those experiences. Is that Barb chiming in?
Karen,
I believe may actually be. Was that Ms. Gresham?
Yes?
That's the question. was my question.
Oh, here's what I'm going to ask you to do, Ms. Gresham. You need to pipe up if you have something to say. Just, it's...
Yep.
All right, because I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to be heard.
I appreciate it. So I do have one. So are we, just as far as the advertising, I would defer to Ms. Rodriguez and Dr. Baca. I would encourage, and I think this was on her list, the NADC and the ALA. So we have the
Yes.
The diversity, and that's all I have to say about that. Everything else sounds fine. I'm available any date. So.
Yes, ALAS is on there. Yes, Ms.
Thank you.
Hausman.
So I think we can probably, on the minimum requirements, I think we want someone who's been in a director position or above. I think that's probably pretty, that would be, because smaller districts might not have assistant or associate superintendents. We want someone who has a master's. And I think we need to decide, is classroom experience. I think we have been open to someone that doesn't have classroom experience. I wouldn't want at this point to take that out of the option pool, but I think these are some pretty basic things
And you
we can decide on right now, personally.
Say preferred, like elementary, middle. What if you have any preferences, you can specify.
Okay, I'm going to go Dr. Osborne and then Mr.
I think one of the other skills I would like to see is a background in operations, finance. That's a preferred skill as well, because I think, if we're looking at an ideal candidate, we'll have some of those functions, because I think that's vitally important.
Mr. Holcomb.
I got a JD, but it doesn't count. I think it's difficult. I think we do have a strong preference for somebody who has a doctorate degree with the level of this that we have, the support and classroom experience. I think they can have a preference, but I agree with you. I don't want to put somebody out who could be the right fit but doesn't have exactly those things. That's the problem. Is I don't think we're. One thing you had on here is a different background, where part business and part school. That to me, at least I don't. That has no traction to me because I think.
We tried that in our district. It was a disaster.
Yeah. So. I think it's going to be hard. I think we can list things that are preferred, but I don't know. It's just qualification. One of the things I had a question about is whether they are eligible for superintendent.
Right.
I'd like to have a little bit of discussion so I have a better feel for someone coming from outside about getting their superintendent certification in Arizona, and how we should address that issue.
On the application, we ask questions very specifically related to if they have an Arizona superintendent certificate, and the second question is are you eligible for a superintendent certificate in Arizona? Usually, if you have, if you're certified in another state, usually it's relatively easy to transfer and to get certified in the state of Arizona. But we ask those questions, and when we do our interviews, we again talk to the candidates about their certification, because there are some states that don't require superintendent certification. And so we have to be very careful to make sure that we are going over what the Arizona requirements are during our interview to assure that they are eligible for an Arizona superintendent certification. So the board would have to make a decision if you are willing to offer a contract to a finalist who would need to obtain Arizona licensing. That would be something that you would need to think about in advance, and that we would want to know about your eligibility. It would need to be on the flyer too, so that we were very clear about that.
Thank you, Dr. Baca.
So, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, again, I'm going to recommend you finalize the qualifications on October 12th. I think you need to get the input of the surveys that we're going to send out and the focus groups, because it may reveal some qualifications you want to include. You're approving the flyer in there anyway, on that date anyway. And so for Rain Associates and my team work together to say, okay, this is what it reveals. Here's a preliminary draft of the survey of the promotional flyer for you to approve that lists the qualifications. You can be assured that we listed some of the qualifications, either that are not in there or that are already in there, based on the stakeholder group feedback and based on the online survey feedback from our families and staff.
Thank you for that feedback. I believe that that's actually very sage advice. Is there any other? Are there any other comments from my colleagues, present or on the phone, with regards to what we've discussed so far? And if there is anything else, I think we are moving to a motion.
President Spear,
Yes.
I would just like to say I noticed on your flyer as well that you require transcripts, which isn't something that we typically require as a part of the application process, but usually when it gets to a finalist process, we make those available for the district human resources to look at. But it's something we can add if you would like as an upload, but it's not something that we typically ask for the general applicants. We do go through and verify with them verbally, but then they are going to have to be able to share whatever your district requirements are in terms of their eligibility with you if they become a finalist. But I just wanted to, because that is in your flyer, and I just wanted to make sure that we align with what it is you would like us to do.
I believe that your approach makes all the sense in the world.
Okay.
Again, you are the professionals that we've hired to help lead us through this process.
Okay.
So I would defer to that unless there are objections from my colleagues.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm done.
And thank you for bringing that to our attention. With that, may I have a motion to approve the timeline and initiate recruitment efforts for the superintendent search as discussed during the board meeting?
Madam President, I'd like to move that we,
All you have to do is say,
So moved.
so moved.
so moved. Oh, fantastic.
Yes, I'm trying to.
So fabulous.
Well, I have some
President
very, very relevant, very experienced help over here in Dr. Baca.
So seconded.
So moved by Ms. Kazi, so seconded by Mr. Holcomb. Please vote.
I am logged into Board Docs now, so hopefully, yep, I can vote. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Gresham. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much to my colleagues and for moving through this so efficiently. And from Rand Associates, we are grateful to have you on board. Moving on to 7.1 board policies first read. Dr. Baca.
Sure, Madam President, members of the governing board and executive team. First of all, thank you, Dr. Vesely, Dr. Goodwin, and Dr. Chestnut. You're retired. You can go. You've been through many of these board meetings before in the past.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our board policies as our first read is before you. Before we go into that, I'm going to go back to an agendized item, which was the superintendent's report. And I didn't want to do it at the beginning of the meeting because I didn't want to make her nervous. But I want to welcome Danielle Humphrey to our team as the new executive assistant to the board and superintendent. And so now that she's more comfortable, that things are going more smoothly, I know you join me in welcoming her as well, okay? And you're welcome. Flustered at the beginning, so. Before you are 7 different policies as a first read. Of those 7, 6 of them are to align with new state statutes that took place last legislative session. And one in particular, which is Board Policy GCCA, Professional Support Staff Accrued Leave. That one we're bringing back to you similar to last year, that allows us to front load the days for a classified and support staff if there's a COVID-related illness or need to quarantine. So I'm not sure if you're wanting to take these as a first read individually or if you have questions on any of these 7 board policies.
I think the way that I would prefer to do it is to encourage questions about any specific policy, and then I would like to make a motion in whole and accept all of these in one motion if possible.
And actually, Madam President, since they're a first read, you do not need to make a motion. We'll bring them as a second read to the next board meeting, and that's when you'll actually take action to
Thank
approve
you.
them. You're welcome.
My apologies. Then, moving forward, are there any questions with regards to any of these policies? Okay. Dr. Baca?
Thank you. Moving forward with the calendar, as we get that up on the screen. September 28th, just a reminder that we start at 4 o'clock because we begin our school reports in the number 1 library, then followed by a regular board meeting at 6 o'clock. At that time, the action items that you will have regarding the policies we just presented to you as a first read in order to be able to approve those as a second read. Okay? Then moving to October 12th, again, we have our regular board meeting at 6, but we have our study sessions at 4 p.m. Again, at the number 1 library for our middle schools. There, you will be presented with the annual financial report that we must have approved prior to October 15th. And probably also what we will add now that you've approved the timeline to any of these calendar items will then be the items that we discussed here in regard to the superintendent search. And then going back to the 28th, I'm happy that we're going to be able to continue our You Make the Difference and Shining Star Awards for our staff. So unless there's anything else you'd like added, that's what we have planned for the next 2 board meetings.
Mr. Holcomb.
Just a quick question, since we are going to have been scheduling special board meetings and that, should we do that by motion or that adopt those additional meetings, or do we need to take any action on that?
Mr. Holcomb, Madam President, members of the Governing Board and Executive Team, by approving the timeline, I'm assuming you approved the special board meetings that have been calendarized, and therefore you have taken action for that.
Dr. Holcomb. Dr. Osborne.
The only thing I would recommend is maybe we put as a standing agenda item the superintendent search if we don't need it, if there's an update or potential action on any feedback, just so we have that regularly scheduled.
Will do.
So,
Ms. Causey, and then Mr. Holcomb.
I can present the results of the delegate assembly during a board report, or we can calendarize it. It's your call.
I think that during a board report, if that is not too much work for you, Ms. Causey.
It's all good. I just am waiting for the final document to come through.
In order for it to be discussed, would you like it as a separate information item? Otherwise, if you give the report, there can be no discussion as a result of it being
Then go ahead and it sounds like Mr. Holcomb would appreciate it being calendarized or agendized.
Okay, Ms. Causey, for which meeting?
Sorry, what was the question?
Which meeting?
I believe we should have it by the September 28th meeting.
September 28th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Holcomb.
To be on the safe side, do you want me to put October 12th?
Doesn't, whatever works.
Okay.
Whatever works.
Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Osborne's. Do you anticipate that there'll be any things that we have to take action on? Because I like the idea of having the standing item on the superintendent's report. If we do it as an information item, we can hear about it, but we can't take any action. If we agendize it as a report and potential action, there's a potential for us to be able to take some action on it. I'm just asking if you think we'll need the action part of that.
So, Mr. Holcomb, Madam President, members of the Governing Board and Executive Team, now that you've approved a timeline, I'll go back into the calendar and put all the action items related to the superintendent search. And then any board meetings that does not have any of those action items, I will still have as an information item for your possible discussion regarding the superintendent search.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or suggestions with regards to the upcoming calendar? Okay, moving on to adjournment. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Osborne, seconded by Mr. Holcomb. Please vote. The motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.